I never thought my own blood would carve out my heart with a rusty knife, but there I was, flight canceled from that godforsaken Chicago layover, dragging my suitcase up the rain-slicked driveway to my McMansion in the hills of Marin County, only to find my son and his trophy wife jimmying the side window like common burglars in their own goddamn inheritance. The shock hit me like a freight train. Ethan, my golden boy, the one I'd bled for through boardroom wars and midnight mergers, now reduced to this pathetic BNE artist, his Armani jacket soaked and his face twisted in that same entitled snarl I'd seen in too many hostile takeovers. And Sarah, that Botoxed viper he'd married for her daddy's venture capital, whispering frantic orders while glancing over her shoulder, oblivious to the ghost of the mother they'd just erased, me, Evelyn Hargrove, staring from the shadows, my soul crammed into this stranger's broken-down shell, plotting the kind of payback that would make the devil himself blush. It started 6 months earlier, back when life was still a glossy spread in Forbes, me at the helm of Hargrove Dynamics, a Silicon Valley powerhouse churning out AI that could predict market crashes before the baristas at Blue Bottle even brewed the first pour. I'd built it from a garage startup in the 90s, back when disruptor meant more than a buzzword for millennial TED Talks. Ethan was my heir apparent, fresh out of Stanford's MBA program, all sharp suits and sharper ambition. Sarah? She slithered in like a startup pitch, promising synergies, delivering sabotage. They met at a gala for the Tech for Good Foundation, where champagne flowed like VC funding and secrets hid behind NDAs thicker than a politician's conscience. I trusted them. God, what a fool. That trust was my first betrayal, but it wasn't the deepest. No, that came from the lab downstairs, the black-budget project I'd greenlit on a whisper from a DARPA contact. Neural transference. Mind uploading. They called it in hushed board meetings. Swap consciousnesses across bodies, perfect for espionage, immortality hacks, or just screwing over your enemies without the mess of a bullet. We weren't supposed to test it on humans yet, but Ethan had ideas. Mom, imagine the applications, he'd said over steak at the French Laundry, his eyes gleaming like a kid with a new drone. We could revolutionize elder care. Or executive transitions. Transitions. That's what they called it when they strapped me down that night. I'd come home late from a fusion conference in Austin, jet-lagged and nursing a scotch in the study, when the chloroform rag hit. Woke up in a holding cell in the sub-basement, fluorescent buzz drilling into my skull, Ethan looming over me in scrubs, Sarah at the console like a Bond villain's sidekick. "It's for the company, Mom," he said, voice steady as a surgeon's scalpel. "You're slowing down. Investors want fresh blood. This way, you get to retire gracefully, in a body that won't embarrass us." Gracefully. They swapped me into Marlene Voss, a washed-up junkie they'd scraped off the Skid Row sidewalks of LA, 48, track marks like a subway map, lungs tarred from years of meth-fueled despair. Marlene's original mind? Funneled into some cryovat, I guess. I didn't ask, and they didn't offer. My body, fit, 52, with the kind of ageless glow that came from Pelotons and personal trainers, went to Ethan. He paraded around in it the next day, signing off on a merger that gutted my R&D team. All while I clawed at the bars of a psych ward they'd dumped Marlene into, screaming that I was Evelyn Hargrove, Queen of the Valley. The orderlies laughed. Cops dismissed it as DTs. My own lawyers, hired by me, filed for conservatorship, painting the real me as a delusional burnout. Deepest cut? The crime they pinned on me. Turns out, Ethan had been cooking the books for years, siphoning R&D funds into offshore shells for his side hustle, a black market neural tech ring selling swaps to oligarchs and celebs dodging midlife crises. When the feds started sniffing, he needed a fall guy. Who better than the junkie in the CEO's stolen skin? They planted evidence, doctored ledgers in my handwriting, emails from my accounts greenlighting bribes to regulators. I, Marlene, took the rap for it all, shipped off to San Quentin like yesterday's trash, while Ethan and my body testified against me, in a plea deal that made headlines. Tech Titan's tragic fall from grace. Betrayal doesn't get deeper than your son stealing your face to bury you alive. But secrets? Oh, they fester like untreated wounds in this country's underbelly. Marlene's body came with its own ghosts, memories flickering at the edges like bad reception on a Roku. Flashes of a daughter OD'd in a foster home, a husband who beat her till she broke, and yeah, a string of petty thefts that landed her on the streets. But buried under the haze, a night in 18, Marlene boosting a prototype neural rig from a Hargrove warehouse. She'd pawned it to a fence in Oakland, who flipped it to, guess who? Ethan's investors. The tech that swapped us? It started with her crime, the one I now bore like a scarlet letter. Irony? Or design? Ethan knew. He'd been tracking her for months, waiting for the perfect vessel. I rotted in Quinton for 4 months, for months of communal showers that smelled like regret, of shank whispers in the yard, of appeals that bounced off walls built by my own money. Sarah visited once, in my body. Ethan's now, all tailored blazers and condescending smiles. Get clean, Marlene, she cooed through the glass, like she was auditioning for a Lifetime movie. Evelyn's forgiven you. There's a fund for reformed addicts. Forgiven. The word tasted like battery acid. That's when I decided revenge wasn't a phase, it was my new operating system. Escape was controversial from the jump. Not some Shawshank pipe dream, too slow for a valley girl like me. No, I weaponized the system, American style, lawsuits, leaks, and leverage. First, I charmed the shrink, Dr. Patel, a burned-out UC Berkeley alum with a gambling habit and eyes that lingered too long on the orderlies' asses. Shared Marlene's sob stories over contraband smokes, slipped him a burner phone number from a smuggled SIM card. By week 6, he was feeding me psych meds laced with my own coded messages, microdots under the tongue, invisible to scans. Contact Victor Reyes, 1 red. Victor. My old fixer from the garage days, the Chicano shark who'd laundered my first angel round through Ticarius in East Palo Alto. He pulled strings, bribed a guard, faked a medical evac to a rehab clinic in the Mojave. Cost him his left pinky to the Zetas, but loyalty's a currency in this country, and mine ran deep. Out in the desert, under stars that mocked the valley's light pollution, I shed Marlene's skin like a bad investment. Dyed my hair black, got tattoos to match the tracks, ink that told stories of cartel wives and ghosted lovers. Became Lena Voss, ghost in the machine, haunting the edges of the empire I'd built. Revenge planning? Tense as a SEC audit. I started small, testing the waters like a fishing scam. Hacked Ethan's, my personal assistant, via a coffee run in San Francisco, slipping malware into her latte via a rigged USB in the sleeve. Got calendars, emails, the works. Turns out, the swaps weren't stopping at me. Ethan's little cabal was franchising, Russian oligarchs swapping into ballerina bodies for youth serums, Hollywood execs dumping consciousnesses into extras for alibis in Me Too suits. Power corrupts, but in America it monetizes. Sarah was the brains, her daddy's VC firm the silent partner, laundering it all through wellness retreats in Big Sur. My first strike. Controversial as hell. I targeted Sarah's sister, Becca, the good one, a do-gooder prosecutor in the DA's office, all Patagonia vests and imposter syndrome. Leaked docs to her anonymously, Ethan's offshore trails, tied to a human trafficking ring masquerading as talent acquisition for the swaps. Becca bit hard. Launched a probe that had feds raiding a warehouse in Fremont. Chaos ensued. Headlines screaming, tech scandal rocks Bay Area. Stock in Hargrove Dynamics tanking like a .com bust. Ethan, in my skin, went on CNBC denying it all. Face Botox stiff. Voice cracking just enough to sell the betrayed matriarch act. Sarah? She clawed back, smearing Becca as a jealous sibling, in whisper campaigns to the press. Family first, right? But I was just warming up. The tension built like a pressure cooker in a heat wave. Nights holed up in a Fleabag motel off the 101, chain-smoking Camels and mapping kill shots on a whiteboard stolen from a Denny's. Victor hooked me up with gear, encrypted laptops, ghost guns from Arizona fairs, and a mole inside the company, Javier, my old CTO, who'd been retired post-swap. He confirmed the big secret. The original swap wasn't a betrayal, it was a cover. I'd known about Ethan's schemes years ago. Buried them to protect the golden boy. Hell, I'd even authorized a retirement fund transfer that looked like embezzlement. My mistake, my crime. Gifted to Marlene's body to shield him. Deepest betrayal? I did it for love. The one that breaks you. Chow Trio hit during the annual Hargrove Gala at the De Young Museum. Black ties, drone light shows over Golden Gate, the elite toasting innovation while ignoring the gig workers plating their caviar. I infiltrated as a caterer, Lena, in a starched uniform, tray of sliders hiding a neural disruptor prototype. My design, swiped from the lab via Javier. Ethan held cord in my body, Sarah draped on his arm like a status symbol, announcing a philanthropic pivot to neural ethics. Hypocrites. I waited till the speeches, then dosed the champagne fountain with a sedative mist, subtle, deniable, enough to turn the party into a collective nap. In the chaos, I cornered them in the sculpture garden, fog rolling off the bay like cigarette smoke. Mom, Ethan gasped, recognition dawning in eyes that were mine but soulless. Sarah lunged for the panic button, but I had the disruptor pressed to her temple. Zap, and consciousness unravels like cheap thread. Welcome to the swap meet, I hissed, voice gravel from Marlene's vocal cords. We dragged them to a service van, Victor at the wheel, barreling toward an abandoned swap clinic in the East Bay industrial sprawl. The revenge? Dark, tense, straight out of a Tarantino fever dream. Strapped them down side by side, Ethan in Sarah's body, Sarah in Marlene's husk. Watched the machine hum to life, my code reversing the flow. Feel it, kids, I murmured, as their minds flooded into prisons of flesh they'd scorned. Ethan, now in Sarah's lithe frame, screamed about board meetings and legacy. Sarah, rotting in the attic shell, begged for a hit to numb the withdrawal. I let them stew for hours, monologuing like every wronged antihero in a Coen Brothers flick. The ledgers, the lies, the love I'd twisted into this monster. But decisions? Mine were the controversial kind, the ones that'd spark bar fights in Brooklyn dive bars. Do I pull the plug on the machine, fry their brains for good? Or let them live, swapped and shamed, testifying against their own empire? I chose the latter, mercy as malice. Called the feds anonymously, tipped them to the clinic. By dawn, SWAT was swarming, Ethan and Sarah hauled out in cuffs, bodies mismatched like a bad blind date. Hargrove dynamics imploded. SEC charges, congressional hearings, the works. I reclaimed my shell in a black site reversal, courtesy of a grateful Javier and a DARPA pardon, traded for the tech blueprints, of course. The aftermath tasted like victory laced with ash, sweet on the tongue, choking in the throat. I stepped back into my body at a nondescript clinic in Reno, Nevada, the kind of place where mob wives get new faces and whistleblowers vanish. The reversal was brutal, nerves firing wrong, memories overlapping like double-exposed film. For weeks, I stared in mirrors, tracing the faint scars Sarah had etched, Botox lines, a spray tan that wouldn't fade. Ethan and Sarah? They rotted in federal holding, minds trapped in each other's cast-offs. Prosecutors offered deals, but I stonewalled from the shadows, feeding leaks to the Chronicle. Inside the body swap black market, Hargrove heirs twisted empire. Public opinion fractured like a dropped iPhone, America's favorite pastime. Pundits on Fox called it woke overreach, blaming DI hires for the family implosion. CNN ran teary segments on Evelyn's courage, painting me as the feminist phoenix. TikTok exploded with conspiracy vids. Was the swap real, or deepfake psyop? Protests clogged Sand Hill Road, tech bros in Tesla Cybertrucks honking against innovation killers, while baristas from Union Drives chanted for justice for the voiceless. Me? I holed up in a rented A-frame in Tahoe, nursing black coffee and plotting the endgame. Revenge isn't a sprint, it's a hostile takeover, and I wasn't done diluting the shares. The hidden secret clawed its way up then, uglier than a recession dip. Javier, loyal to a fault, dropped the bomb during a burner call from a taqueria in San Jose. Evelyn, it wasn't just the schemes. Ethan, he killed Marlene's fence. That Oakland flipper? Found him floating in the estuary, zip-tied and weighted. Your boy covered it with a swap, framed you to bury the body count.
Killed.
My son, the charmer who'd aced debate club, drowning a lowlife in the muck of the Delta. For what? To protect his pipeline? Or deeper, Marlene's stolen rig had fingerprints, not just on the crate, but on Ethan's rise. Turns out, I'd authorized that warehouse theft years back, a staged loss for tax write-offs. My crime again, the one I'd borne silently, now metastasizing. Tension ratcheted like a noose in a John Grisham thriller. Feds circled closer, subpoenaing my old emails, but I had deniability baked in. Offshore servers, shredded docks. Victor warned of tails, unmarked SUVs, tailing his lowrider from Fruitvale to the bridge. Sarah's daddy, that VC vulture Harlan Crow, flexed muscle, lobbyists whispering to senators, trying to spin the swaps as experimental therapy gone wrong. He even reached out through back channels. Let's settle, Evelyn.
50 mil, non disclosure.
Family stays family.
Family.
The word curdled my gut. I countered with a ghost email. Coordinates to a Dropbox of Crow's own dirt. Funding ties to Eastern European kleptos. Swaps for oligarch mistresses. My next move? Pure controversy, the kind that'd get me canceled on every podcast from Joe Rogan to Chapo Trap House. I went public, not as the victim, but the enabler. Sat for an interview with Kara Swisher on her Pivot Pod, voice steady as a TED Talk, admitting I'd known about the schemes. I chose legacy over law, I said, staring down the camera like it was Ethan's stolen eyes. That's the American dream. Build it, break it, bury the bodies. But when it comes for your soul, you fight dirty. The internet detonated. Evelyn confession trended, with blue-check therapists diagnosing maternal narcissism and Red Hat forums crowing, finally, a mogul with balls. Death threats flooded my P.O. box. Fan mail arrived with crude fanfic swaps. It bought me time, but Chow Treo loomed like a market crash. Ethan cracked first, snitched on Sarah for a reduced sentence, trading her lithe body for a men's pen in Folsom. She, in Marlene's wreck, lawyered up with Crow's war chest, countersuing me for elder abuse via neural tampering. Absurd, but in California's courts, absurdity pays. I needed leverage, the nuclear kind. Victor scrounged it from a swap survivor, a former SEAL, mine dumped into a comatose vet shell, rotting in a VA hospice. He fingered the cabal's apex, not Ethan but me. Wait, what? Twist hit like a rug pull in a crypto scam. The SEAL's files, hacked from a DARPA vault, showed my signature on the original neural protocol. Not Ethan's pitch, mine. Years back, post-divorce from Ethan's dad, that Wall Street prick who OD'd on coke in '09, I'd greenlit the swaps for personal gain, testing immortality hacks to outlive the grief. Ethan found out, twisted it into his scheme. But the betrayal? Mutual. I'd buried his first kill, the fence, to protect my tech, my empire. Deepest secret, I wasn't the victim. I was the architect. The swap? My idea, executed by my son to retire, me when I balked at going full black market. Shock rooted me to the Tahoe deck, Lake Tahoe's waters mocking my reflection. I'd borne the crime, yes, but I'd sown it. Revenge curdled into reckoning. Do I double down, fry the whole rotten board? Or confess, torch it all for a clean slate? Decisions like that don't come with focus groups. I chose the abyss. Drove down to Folsom under a blood moon, bribing a guard for conjugal time with Ethan in Sarah's body. He minced in, heels clicking awkward on concrete. Eyes, my eyes, pleading.
Mom, we can fix this.
Swap back, blame Crow. I laughed, bitter as Bay Area fog.
Fix?
You drowned a man for my mistakes. And I let you. Confession spilled. My role, the grief-fueled genesis. He recoiled, then grinned. That same entitled flash. So we're the same, partners again.
No.
I slipped him a vial. Neural accelerant, my design.
Drink, I said.
Feel every swap at once. All the ghosts. He did, convulsing as memories flooded. Marlene's OD daughter, the fence's last breaths, Sarah's venomous whispers. Broke him, not with fists, but truth. Guards hauled him out gibbering. By morning, he was catatonic, a vegetable in heels. Sarah next, in Marlene's body at the women's lockup in Chowchilla. She looked up from her cot, tracks fresh from smuggled needles, eyes feral. "You bitch," she spat. "This skin's killing me." I didn't swap her back, worse. Wired her a final gift, access to the full archive, every dirty deal. "Testify," I said. "Or rot knowing you could have burned it down." She chose fire, sang to the feds, toppling Crow, the cabal, the lot. Controversial? Hell yes. Empowering a viper to bite her own tail, all while I played puppet master. The empire crumbled like a Jenga tower at a frat party. Hargrove dynamics delisted overnight. Assets seized in a feeding frenzy of class actions and asset forfeits. I watched from a burner laptop in a Boise diner. Hash browns congealing as CNBC looped the carnage. Neural nightmare, from innovation to incarceration. Ethan vegetated in a state psych ward. Sarah testified in exchanges for immunity, her voice gravelly from Marlene's throat, spilling sins that made senators sweat. Crow fled to his Monaco bolt hole, but Interpol nabbed him mid-yacht party, swapping caviar for cuffs.
Me?
I was the phantom, Evelyn Hargrove, exonerated but exiled, a pariah in the valley I birthed. Tension didn't fade. It morphed, as a hitchhiker's thumb in the rain. Nightmares blended bodies. Ethan's face on Marlene's frame, gurgling pleas, Sarah's laugh echoing from my pores. Therapy? Please, shrinks in America pedal pills, not absolution. I drove aimless. 80 bleeding into 84, chasing anonymity in flyover voids. Stopped in Salt Lake for a week, posing as a realtor scouting foreclosures, but Mormon politeness cracked under my questions about second chances. Truth's a virus. It spreads. The controversial decisions piled like parking tickets in LA. First, mercy for Javier. The feds wanted him for accessory, hacking charges that'd stick like gum on a hot sidewalk. I could have cut him loose, let him swing for loyalty. Instead, I framed a confession vid, him admitting to solo leaks, painting me clean. Cost me a decade of contacts, but blood's thicker than code. He vanished to Baja, opening a surf shop with launder residuals. Ironic, a CTO riding waves instead of servers. Next, the public pivot. America loves a redemption arc, but mine was laced with thorns. I founded the Voss Foundation, named for Marlene, that ghost I'd worn, from scraps of frozen assets. Mission, neural ethics, victim reparations for swap survivors. Donated the tech patents to open source, with kill switches for black market mods. Headlines hailed it. Fallen tech, queen rises for the forgotten. But whispers followed. Accusations I was whitewashing, profiting off pain. Protests at the first gala in D.C., survivors in mismatched bodies chanting blood money outside the Kennedy Center. I faced them, mic in hand. You're right. I built the cage. Now I'm handing you the key. Polarizing? Like Trump at a BLM rally. Donations poured in from guilt-ridden VCs, boycotts from purists who'd rather burn it down. But secrets don't die. They metastasize. Marlene's memories sharpened in quiet hours, not just grief, but agency. Turns out, she'd stolen that rig not for pawn, but payback. Her fence? Not just a flipper. He'd pimped her daughter to tech bros at networking parties, the kind where NDAs seal lips and fortunes. Marlene boosted it to expose him, but Ethan intercepted, killed to contain. My crime, the tax dodge, had funded those very parties indirectly. The loop tightened. I'd borne her sin, she'd borne mine. A karmic swap deeper than circuits. Chow Treo Redix brewed in the heartland, where ambition goes to die. A tip from a swap survivor led me to Omaha, a rogue lab in a repurposed corn silo, Harlan Crow's last gasp. He'd smuggled a neural rig stateside, peddling executive rejuvenation to Midwest moguls dodging farm bankruptcies. I went in solo, no victor this time. Too risky for his pinky stub hands. Posed as a buyer. Lena Voss, seeking a legacy lift. The doc, a defrocked Mayo Clinic hack, bought it, strapped me down in a trailer reeking of ethanol and regret. But I flipped the script, wired the rig to reverse feed, not swapping me, but archiving his mind into a loop of his own victim screams. He thrashed as it downloaded, daughters lost to opportunities, wives aged out of boardrooms. Feel the weight, I whispered, echoing Ethan's mercy plea. Let him live, catatonic in a silo cell, a monument to unchecked power. Controversial? Vigilante justice in red state flyover. Fox called me avenging angel. MSNBC, unhinged harpy. Feds cleaned up the mess, but my prince stayed ghostly. Twist 2 slithered in via certified mail, a thumb drive from Sarah, post-testimony. For the full truth, her note read, scrawled in Marlene's shaky hand. Footage, not of swaps, but seductions. Me, pre-grief, post-divorce, betting Ethan's dad in that garage, raw, ambitious, birthing the beast. But cut to Ethan, teenaged, spying through the slats, eyes wide not with shock, but hunger. He'd emulated it all, the ruthlessness, the covers. Betrayal inverted. I hadn't twisted him. He'd mirrored me, amplifying sins till they consumed us. The crime I'd borne? His inheritance, not accident. Debate raged in my skull like a cable news panel. Ended happy. Reclaim the throne. Voss Foundation to Nobel glory? Or tragic. Exile permanent. A warning to the valley's gods? I chose the gray. American as apple pie with arsenic. Exile suited me like a thrift store flannel. Itchy, but authentic. I ditched Tahoe for the Badlands, a prefab on the edge of the Pine Ridge Reservation, where cell service spotty as a politician's promises let secrets breathe. Voss Foundation hummed remotely. Grants to survivors, lawsuits against enablers. Javier checked in from Baja via postcards, waves crashing, no subpoenas. Ethan? Transferred to a low SEC in Colorado, mind mending slow as continental drift. Sarah walked free, immunity's golden ticket, but Marlene's body broke her. Relapsed in a halfway house, last seen hitchhiking east with a duffel of bad decisions. Tension lingered, fog that no amount of sage smudging chased. Dreams swapped realities, me and Ethan's frame, brokering deals with blood on the contracts, Marlene's daughter alive, accusing from the grave. I journaled it out. First-person confessions in a Moleskine bot at a truck stop. Raw therapy for a woman who'd outsourced her soul. America's underbelly revealed itself in those pages. Not just text gloss, but the rot beneath. Fentanyl pipelines from China laundered through crypto. Foster kids funneled to talent scouts, all enabled by disruptors like me. Controversial calls kept coming, each a grenade in a pillow fight. 1. Forgiving Becca. Sarah's sister, the prosecutor, resigned in disgrace after the leaks backfired, her office tainted by Crow's bribes. She showed up at my door unannounced, Patagonia fleece dusted with South Dakota snow, eyes red from crying jags or cheap Merlot. You destroyed my life, she said, voice cracking like thin ice.
Destroyed?
I'd handed her the scalpel. But guilt's a bitch. I offered her a job at Voss, chief ethics officer. She took it, spitting fire and board calls about accountability audits. Haters online dubbed it Stockholm Syndrome hiring. Fans called it feminist solidarity. Me? Pragmatism. Keep your enemies closer than your Peloton. Deeper dive. The media blitz. I penned an op-ed for the Times, Swapped Souls, Why America's Innovation Fetish Devours Its Own, detailing the grief that birthed the beast. Went viral, dissected on every pod from Freakonomics to the Daily. Backlash?
Swiftos a Twitterban.
Valley insiders ice me out. Old Stanford alums whispered ungrateful has been. But the real controversy brewed in the res. Locals eyed my prefab warily, remembering wounded knee more than wellness grants. I hosted town halls in sweat lodges, listening to elders swap stories of stolen land paralleling stolen mines. Your tech? Just fancier blankets, one Oglala woman said, eyes like polished obsidian. Truth stung. I funneled half the foundation's pot to indigenous AI sovereignty projects. Debatable win, progressive cred, or cultural appropriation 2.0. Secrets unearthed themselves in fragments, like shrapnel from a dud IED. A letter from Ethan's cellmate, a lifer poet with tats of Aztec calendars, detailed my boy's unraveling. "Kid talks in his sleep," he wrote, postage stamped with contraband ink. Mumbles about a mom who built thrones from bones, then cried when he Saturday.
Bones.
The fences, Marlene's daughters, mine. But the twist inverted again. Ethan hadn't just mirrored. He'd manipulated. Teen footage on Sarah's drive?
Doctored.
Originals showed him not spying, but staging, leaving the door ajar, planting the affair to fuel his Oedipal fire. My seduction? Bait he set, reeling in the monster to match his own. Chow Treo crested in a blizzard, winds howling like banshees off the Black Hills. Ethan escaped, low SEC folly, a guard bought with smuggled Bitcoin. Tracked me via Javier's postcard trail, showing up at the prefab soaked in slush, Sarah's body gaunt under a stolen parka. "Mom," he rasped, breath fogging the door like a plea. "No gun, just desperation. Swap us back. End this." Mine pleaded, but the snarl lurked. I let him in, pot of chicory coffee steaming between us like a truce flag. Confession round 2, his machinations, the staged affair, the kill he'd pinned to protect our dynasty. "We could have ruled," he said, hands trembling on the mug. "Ruled? Like the robber barons who'd fracked the plains dry." I saw the loop complete, me birthing him birthing my worst, us swapping sins till indistinguishable. Decision time. Controversial apex. Call the feds, recapture the fugitive son? Or one last swap, mother to monster, ending the cycle in mutual erasure?
Y chose erasure.
Wire the prefabs Jenny to a makeshift rig, scavenged parts from a deadwood pawn shop, my brain the blueprint. Strapped us down back to back, tubes humming like a dirge. "Feel it all," I said, initiating the flood. Not bodies, but essences. His hunger into my resolve, my regrets into his void. Agony arched us like lightning rods, memories merged, garage dreams, delta drownings, valley conquests. Twist final. In the maelstrom, truth reversed. We weren't betrayers. We were the betrayed, by a system that swapped souls for stock ticks. Emerging, I in his shell, Sarah's really, him and mine, but fused, a hybrid haunting. Fusion left us as echoes, me in the hybrid husk, Ethan a shadow in my original frame, minds entwined like kudzu on a Confederate statue. We didn't swap back. Couldn't, the rig fried in the storm. Instead, we drove east, I-90 unspooling like a bad therapy tape, debating endings over truck stop burritos. "Happy," he scoffed, voice mine but laced with his sarcasm. Or tragic. "Pick your poison, Mom." America decided for us. Billboards for megachurches promising salvation, ghost signs for ghost towns whispering obsolescence. The road was tension incarnate, pit stops where we'd spar in motel mirrors. Whose sin was heavier? Mine for architecting the cage, his for locking it. Controversial detours marked the miles. In Chicago, full circle from that canceled flight, we torched a data center holding swap archives, flames licking the loop skyline like vengeful angels. Arson as catharsis? Cops called it eco-terror. We called it reset. No arrests. Ghosts don't leave prints, but the feds tighten the net. APBs with our mismatched mugs. Sarah found us in Cleveland, tracking via a Voss grant she'd hijacked post-relapse. Showed up at a dive bar on the flats, Marlene's body bloated from benders, eyes feral as a Rust Belt recession. "You two freaks," she slurred, nursing a Boilermaker. "Gimme back my skin." Brawl ensued, fists, accusations, the barfly chorus cheering like it was WrestleMania. Truth spilled amid the spills, her role not sidekick, but spark. She'd seduced Ethan at that gala not for capital, but to infiltrate Crow's orders, testing the neural waters for a bigger play. Government contracts, mind control for the masses. Betrayal cubed, we'd all been pawns in her daddy's chessboard. Chow Treo finale, a midnight meet at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Ironic shrine to American reinvention. Crow waited, flanked by mercs in off-the-rack suits, his yacht tan faded to jaundice. Evelyn, or whoever, he drawled, cigar smoke curling like a noose. Let's end this. One swap. All back. NDA eternal. Power's maw, yawning wide. Ethan in my body. Tensed. I felt it in our fused link, a phantom twitch. Decision. The debatable doozy. Take the deal. Reclaim normalcy in a tainted shell? Or blow it sky-high. Tragic blaze of fused glory? We chose blaze. Ethan lunged, distracting with a faint born of our merged muscle memory. I triggered the hull's fire suppression, but laced with accelerant from Victor's last care package. Chaos. Sprinklers spewing flames. Merc slipping on wet marble, Crow choking on his own smoke. In the pandemonium, we cornered him by the Dylan exhibit, his empire reduced to bootleg tapes. Truth reverses, I said, voice a duet of ours. You built the board. We flipped the table. No kill. Controversial mercy again. Hacked his phone mid-scuffle, live streaming confessions to every dark web forum, swaps for senators, bribes for borders. By dawn, he was zip-tied for the feds, babbling about the fusion. Ending? Debatable as a Supreme Court leak. We vanished into Appalachia. Fused freaks running a moonshine still disguised as a craft distillery. Irony's last laugh. Valley disruptors distilling hooch for hillbillies. Voss Foundation thrived without us. Becca at the helm. Swaps outlawed in a bipartisan bill dubbed Hargrove Act. Ethan and I? We spar still. Arguments over still recipes echoing old boardroom brawls, but the tensions eased. To twilight. Happy? In redemption's gray. Tragic? In the sins we can't unswap. Readers will argue it over IPAs in Brooklyn or bourbons in Nashville. Villainy or vindication.
Me?
I'd say it's American. Messy. Merged. Marching on. The devil's in the details, and ours were damned delicious.